All right, everybody. Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back, and let's get into it because I know a lot of people want to know what's going on. So, Super Microcomputer, ticker symbol SMCI, listed here on the Nasdaq. Stock closed 443.49 a share, down over 100 points, 19% haircut on the day. Still dropping a couple of bucks here after hours. 432 and a quarter right now, down about 11 and a quarter, or about 2.5% additionally after hours. But I wanted to show you guys. First of all, initially mentioned on this channel. I believe it was like back here somewhere. Was it August? Yeah, it was maybe like October or just something like that. I don't know, whatever. But initially mentioned on this channel 350. I said, in my opinion, we could see 550. We started running up, and then I said, I don't know, 800, 1,000, I think at the time. Stock got listed on the S&P. Boom. We ran up. We hit 1229. I tweeted out and I said, in my opinion, in the Discord that we could potentially see about 1,300 maybe I was looking for off of this news. But we top out 1229. We start consolidating downward. Then we can see that these earnings came out. I'm just giving a quick recap. Bear with me. But we can see that these earnings came out about 3 weeks ago, and we had a miss on the EPS side and a tiny miss of about 8 million and change on the revenue side. So the stock ended up dipping down almost to where it is now, right? It dips down to like the high 400s, climbs back up, tries to reclaim this fib level here back above 630. You can see basically flattens out for about 5, 6 sessions. Then we start rejecting, selling off, and then the short seller report comes out. And now there is a supposed delay with SMCI's filing of its 10K. So we're going to get into the news real quick. But overall, long term, again, you guys know how I feel about this situation. And if you're not a sub, obviously, I asked if you like the video, sub. But also, more importantly, for anyone who's not a sub, I've done a lot of updates on this company, basically like one a month. I'm not trying to, keep going back to the well. But I've stated that I personally really like this company, especially for the longer term, and I'm looking for north of 2,000 a share from this current level. So you'd be talking about what's that? About 400% return from this current level. And of course, we can potentially drop back down because you can see again the stock ran up into like the mid high 200s, and we had this flattening period for several months before we took that next leg higher. And this is why I said we ran from like 280, 320, 350. We ran straight up to 1,200. So that's why I kept pointing out some of these trend lines, and I was saying like back here that we could drop to this blue line, we could see 650, right? We could break down, we could see sub 600 if we break down and touch this trend line. If we pull all the way back, I mentioned we could see about 400 here. I think I pointed out maybe like 408, 410 or something. And now you can see that, yes, we're kind of near that range, but the stock broke, came down slightly below this fib level, and then bounced, and you can see went on a nice run, bounced healthily, looking like off of this trend line. Look at the daily. And we closed above the trend line technically. So in my opinion, it's a pretty good sign. And, again, this is just my opinion, it's not advice, but if I liked it at 700, 800, now the stock's, down at the 400s, possibly approaching the 300s again, as we saw today for a minute. In my opinion, I would like it even more. However, the short seller report, he does hint that this company had an issue in the past. I think they said back in like 2018, and they were like slightly delisted from the Nasdaq, temporarily delisted. Then obviously they got back on. But I just feel like, again, me personally, I just feel like the growth and the demand is there. And in the immediate short term, they can try to come out with these catalysts to try to bring the stock down and beat the company up. But as I mentioned originally, when I mentioned back when I was a broker here during these years, I found this company, and you can see it grew nicely here, and then it went into a multi-year consolidation. We're talking about like 3+ years. And when I was looking at the stability of the revenue and basically how healthy the balance sheet was, right? Because we looked at it and, not that much debt, even back here, but obviously today as well, not that much debt, growing revenue, they're profitable. So it seemed like it should have been higher. And then we had this multi-year consolidation, big dip there in 2018, and then boom, we've been off to the races ever since. So this is why I say sometimes it does take time if you're talking about a longer term investment as opposed to, a weekly or a monthly trade, of course. But this is why I say, like, this whole time when it was just channeling downward here, if you were just slowly accumulating shares, building a position like we speak about, now you're sitting pretty. And yes, it took several years, but you made the right call. And these are the types of moves and growth and appreciation that we want to see in a long-term investment. So that's why I'm saying, me personally, if I liked it 700, 800, now it's down 400, 310, or whatever, if it breaks and goes to this fib, I would like it even more. And, unless they randomly start losing clients or demand falls off a cliff, then chances are they're probably going to continue to grow alongside of the rest of the sector and all the competitors and everything he wants, the short seller wants to talk about. But again, just my opinion. But if we look here, Supermicro computer shares plunge amid expected Form 10K delay. So stock tumbled Wednesday after the company announced an expected delay in its filing of its annual Form 10K. A day after short seller Hindenburg Research accused the company of, quote, accounting manipulation. Now, basically, they're saying, right, they need additional time, internal controls, June 30th, can't do it, 20% hit. So basically, this report is citing that they've had issues in the past. And it seems like, in my opinion, they're kind of just banking that something else is wrong as well. Because if you really think about it, and I know it's kind of crass to say, but if you really think about it, even let's just say hypothetically there was an accounting error, and they were doing, I guess we could say, something shady, we can assume, right? Let's try to go down this path. Probably going to get fined, right? What are we talking? See, even back here, they point out a $17.5 million SEC settlement. So that's what I mean. So even if something happens, even if they hit them up for 30 million, 50 mil, I forgot to sign off Steam again, my apologies. But even if they hit them up, 40 mil, 50 mil or whatever, we all know technically that would be a drop in the bucket. And even if they did have some errors on their end, and now they have to shuffle a couple of people around, they had the wrong person in the right position and the right person in the wrong position, whatever the hell, at the end of the day, they'll probably rectify the situation. I know because, if I was on the board of directors and I saw this growth and the stability and this demand, I would say, hey, listen, whoever the issue is, I don't care whose nephew it is, right? We got to get them out of there and we got to fix the problem and we got to look forward. So that's why, in my opinion, I don't even really see this as a big deal. But we'll see what happens. But we were down 20%. So Hindenburg said investigation of the company identified, quote, glaring accounting red flags, evidence of undisclosed related party transactions, sanctions and export control failures, and customer issues. Supermicro was temporarily delisted from the NASDAQ in 2018 for being unable to file its financial statements. The SEC later charged the company for, quote, widespread accounting violations. The short seller alleged, among other things, that less than 3 months after paying $17.5 million SEC settlement, the company started rehiring top executives who were directly involved in the accounting scandal. Okay, see, so fair enough point, right? Basically, the way I'm looking at it is they're saying, hey, listen, they did a couple of messed up things a handful of years ago. Now, supposedly, they rehired these people, this person is saying. So, it was only a matter of time before they tried to go down the same road, maybe make their numbers look a little better than they thought, than everyone thought. So, it's inevitable. It was going to happen again. I'm calling it out. And listen, I respect that. I do respect it. But, just a couple of things here. First of all, again, 17.5 million meant more to them back then than it does today, right? So that's why I'm saying 40, 50, even 100 million, if they have to do some sort of settlement to right the wrong, going to be a drop in the bucket, in my opinion. And also, the company started rehiring top executives who were directly involved in the accounting scandal. Yeah, I can appreciate the fact it's a red flag, but I have to ask this silly question. I mean, it obviously wasn't illegal. Perhaps it's frowned upon, but there's technically nothing wrong with that, because if you think, I mean, we're in 2024, right? So we're talking 6 years ago. So you're telling me, they rehired these people who were involved in this quote unquote scandal, but no one said anything, no one had an issue with anything, and everything's still okay. It's been 6 years. You're the first person to have an issue with this. Right? I mean, I understand it's more of like a layman's common sense argument, but at the same time, makes sense, right? All of a sudden, 6 years later, this is an issue who they hired? Like, come on. Quote, while the company gained an initial lead in supporting the AI industry, it seems to be cutting corners on its accounting, sanctions compliance, and product quality. Well, I have to disagree with that small portion about product quality because it's very simple. If you make a crappy product and it doesn't work, nobody wants it, right? I mean, that's kind of business 101. So if the demand is, growing greater than they can handle it, and revenue's consistently increasing, I don't know if we can try to attack their product quality, but it's fine. All while credible competitors eat away at its margins and market share. All while competitors eat away at its margin and market share. Now, I know margin took a hit this last quarter, but margins were growing nicely. Revenue was stable and growing nicely, and we broke up. We went from sub 4 to almost 5.25 billion. So I don't understand that little jab. Credible competitors eat away at its margin and market share. I disagree. And again, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but like we always say, hey, for all we know, one hand washes the other behind the curtain. Someone talks badly about a company or raises doubt, while all the meanwhile someone else is building a position potentially in the company. Right? This is what I mean. Even at 1200, most analysts, pretty much everyone out there was still bullish on SMCI. They saw the growth. They saw the future demand and the steady climb in revenue moving forward over the next 2-3 years minimum. All of a sudden, we have an issue. Right? Think about that. Company said Wednesday in its statement, hasn't made any updates to its fiscal fourth quarter full year financial results that were released earlier this month. Supermicro has always had, quote, an aggressive sales culture, which is probably why it's a great company, because we know it's all about your sales team, right? I was essentially in sales when I was a broker. It's like the hardest thing to sell, right? I call you out of the blue. I have to try to make you like me, like the stock, but also trust me, trust the firm. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why it's one of the most difficult things to sell. So if you think you're good at sales, if you truly are, then go be a stockbroker. No, I'm just kidding. But you understand my point. If your sales team is getting the right incentives and the right support, and they have a good environment, with a good lead, then yeah, you're going to be off to the races. So if we have to accredit the sales team, then of course they're aggressive. All my salespeople out there, let us know in the comment section below. Do you like to take no for an answer? If someone tells you, no, I'm not interested, don't you try a little bit harder? Just try to turn it around? No, wait, hold on. One more thing, Mr. Jones. You have to be aggressive in sales. Because, of course, if you just walk up to people and say, hey, you want to buy this? Everyone's just going to say no. So what are you going to do? Just walk away and just keep, hey, you want to buy this? Hey, you want to buy this? Just hope that you stumble upon a millionaire who will just throw you money. Yeah, whatever, I'll take one. Come on, let's be serious here. Which likely resulted in, quote, the relatively minor shifts in revenue accounting that caused its delisting and financial restatements in 2018 and 2019. Quote, while we see this culture as necessarily creating risk that employees push too hard to book deals to achieve targets, we certainly don't see this risk as new. I mean, after all, again, this guy's in the financial industry. That's why I'm saying it was possibly originally started as, a Series 7 licensed FA or something. So we know you need to be aggressive in sales, especially here in the States, I will say. Sometimes when I would come in early in the office and call some like overseas leads, and I'd speak to people overseas in Europe, like in the UK and whatnot. They're obviously they're a little bit more reserved, which is fine, of course, which is fine. But you have to be aggressive in sales, right? Always. We know this. We know this. So it's a risk, but you don't see this risk as new. And we know it's not new because once they quote unquote let the bull loose under Reagan back in the 80s, that's when sales teams went through the roof. That's when the incentives started to roll out for the brokers and for the advisors. You understand? That's when more money would come into the market because they were selling, they were pushing it more so that they would make more commissions, right? Of course. But most stuff was growing, of course, at the time. So like kind of like everybody was making out for the most part. But the brokerage said it would be, quote, very surprised if Supermicro is selling directly to any entity that's restricted by U.S. regulations. The company has, quote, little control over where its servers end up after the initial sale. Yeah, no shit. We know this. We know, I mean, if I sell you my computer and then you sell my computer to the FBI, I didn't, by the transitive property, I didn't sell it to the FBI. You understand what I'm saying? Like, what are we talking about here? What are we really talking about? This is why I'm saying, listen, technically innocent until proven guilty. If they are, found guilty of some accounting issues again or whatever, like they had back in 2018, then yes, of course, the stock will most likely take a hit and could drop back to the twos. You might see this, 155, who knows? A lot of people might jump ship and just say, oh, I'll give them a year or two and then I'll look back in on it. But the business itself is still there. That's unless we truly find out that, like, yeah, this 5.3 billion last quarter was really 1.2 billion, right? If you find out something like that, then we're talking about a complete rehaul of our valuation and the stock is going to get absolutely shredded. But yeah, if we're talking, oh, we had an issue, we paid whatever, 20 million, 30 million, well, everything's fine now, we're back on the NASDAQ, it's no problem. Like, what are we really talking about? And with all due respect, I know I like SMCI, so I'm kind of coming to its defense a little bit here, it may sound like. Understandable. But again, I got the numbers to back me up, right? But who knows? They might not be real. No, I'm just kidding. But more importantly, of all the tech companies out there, this is the one you attack right now. SMCI, the up-and-comer, the one that, again, like I said, was quiet for so many years, was flying underneath the radar, right? I said, in my opinion, those are the companies to look for. The companies who aren't getting that spotlight. Anytime they talk about tech, what are the companies they talk about? Oh, look at NVIDIA. We like Apple. Look at Google, right? No one was talking about SMCI. That's why it was growing so nicely. Now, all of a sudden, that the word is out, we got listed on the S&P, demand is up. They were forecasting, what'd they say, like 40 plus million or a billion, 50 billion, like next year's revenue or something. They were forecasting off of demand. I don't remember right offhand, but I know it was higher. And that's what started to chunk up the stock as well, because they were raising future quarterly guidance. They were raising, next year and the year after's full year revenue guidance. So the stock started to run and climb off of future growth, right? Isn't that how stocks trade? That's the defense I always get from something like NVIDIA. So that's why to go after SMCI, in my eyes, it doesn't make sense. And I've mentioned personally, I know a handful of tech companies that could be viewed as overvalued, that might be cooking the books behind the scenes, but no one's saying anything because all the banks and institutions are holding shares. I have no idea what's going on, and I'm not trying to go down that hole again. But at the end of the day, I'm sure you can appreciate what I'm saying. This company went from zero to hero, and now all of a sudden, we have issues. And we're launching a 3-month investigation. Who are these people to launch this investigation? And again, not necessarily finding proof. They're basically just reiterating past examples and trying to say that, they're probably happening again. Like that's what kind of report you file? I don't know. In my opinion, it just doesn't make sense. And with all due respect, I obviously didn't read the full report, but based off those few snippets that were mentioned in that article, I, for the most part, disagree with that stance. And I know, again, I like the company, so I understand if I may be a little biased. But again, full disclosure, I do not have a position in SMCI. I do not own shares. I did not buy leaps. I did nothing. So, again, I don't have any skin in the game. I just like to call it the way I personally see it. And in my opinion, again, this is an opportunity. And even if it breaks and it drops and it goes from 400 down to the low 300s, unless that news really is true and comes to fruition and everything gets thrown out of whack, then until that happens, it hasn't happened and there's no issue. And while other people were raising price targets and probably slowly building a position, all of a sudden this person comes out and says, "Oh no, there's an issue," and that's why I'm telling you, other people who were building positions at 700-800 are probably sitting there saying, "Oh, thank you very much," because I'll build, and even if it channels downward like this, I'll just keep adding shares, and yeah, now it's going to suck, but when we get to here, it's going to be great. So that's why, in my opinion, that's probably the way a lot of people were looking at it. But I mentioned this bottom trend line here, and I kept saying, even when we were up here, I said this at any time, because it ran up so much, this could start breaking these lines and we can pull back to, 600, 500, 400, no problem. And you see that we came down to 395.18, right to this fib almost 397.36. Then we had a nice bounce. And if we pull up the daily chart, you can see we were bouncing multiple times and fighting to maintain this trend line. Dips down, does a nice curl, and then look, gets above it, and it's off to the races. Got up to almost 450 back from this 408 trend line level. So technically it closed back above that trend line. So it may kind of just channel in here maybe for the next couple of weeks, and then potentially break back out, back up to this 639 roughly fib. Again, there's the 1-year chart. These are the fib levels I'm looking at. Let's look at stock charts real quick. I'll let you go. Look at this RSI now on the daily. Sub 30. Last time we did dip well below sub 30, and then we went on a nice run back up there from sub 500 back up to almost 650 it looks like. And look, we hung out at that trend line and, of course, at the mid-Bollinger Band. That's right here. Look at that. Look at that flatness. Just holding that level of the trend line. And then we got the short seller report and then the 10K delay news today. So now we started to break. Look, MACD crossed to the downside. That's why we could potentially also retest this trend line, and we couldn't break and drop down to this fib again, because now we have the MACD crossing to the downside. But again, there's probably going to be a lot of long-term dip buyers and a lot of potential traders, a lot of swing traders here now, looking to step in at sub 30 RSI and swing this baby back up to 550, 580, and boom, we're in, we're out. Bang, nice profits. Even on shares, that would be roughly 20, 25%. You're in, you're out, in my opinion, if you're trading, right? You're not married to anything. Over the longer term, again, you can see that we now, look at this phenomenal climb of these moving averages, right? But we now have the break on the 50-day moving average here on the weekly. We're also below the bottom Bollinger Band now. So our Bollinger Bands are going to continue to trumpet because we swung so much. And this will probably go up a little bit and then start to curl downward following the stock. And you can see, though, this looks like the key level right here. And yeah, we're looking, what, like 275 kind of would be like the middle of this range. See how tight and flat the stock was here before taking off? So this would be kind of like this high. Yeah, like 270, 275, like in that range. Looks like that is where we can potentially go if we really do continue to sell off here. But even back to that 350 level, kind of where we paused before we took that next run up higher. This is why I'm saying there is still, ow, I just bashed my knee. There is still potential to pull back and sell off. RSI 37.5 on the weekly. So that's why this can continue to come back down to that 30 benchmark, and then we can bounce, which is why the RSI on the daily can have that dip of where it stays above or below that benchmark. right? As you see here, several days well below that 30 benchmark, and then boom, we have spike up. So the RSI here on the daily can drop to 20 or 18 over the next day or two, because for the weekly RSI, it still has potential to come down about 7.5 more points. Then maybe it'll bounce. Once the dust settles and, the stock just took like a 60% haircut, now it'll flatten out and potentially start to curl back upward, try to reclaim that 50-day. But here, like this 200-day at 211.38, unless more negative news comes out, that's why I'm saying chances are it's not going to drop that far. But I'd say right now, in its current state, max risk maybe down here to about 270, 275. But again, I personally like it in the long term. I'm looking for 2000 plus over the next year or two. So in my opinion, obviously, I would be a buyer here of it. But that's just me, and I'll end it there. But let me know in the comments section how you guys feel about this one. Did anyone buy the dips? Did anyone happen to be holding a put, and then you woke up today, you saw this news, so bang, you got blessed, you made huge returns today. So let me know about any positions you have in SMCI, or any positions you're thinking about taking moving forward, and we'll have a good conversation about it. But again, for all you long-term players out there, I know it sucks, but like the saying goes, sometimes we have to deal with the short-term volatility, and we have to potentially hang on for that long-term growth. And that's why I personally like to kind of piece your way into a position, not just go all in and hope for the best. And again, if you started buying at 600, 700, now it's down here at 500, it's down here at 430, right? You're viewing these as opportunities, not necessarily as negatives. But that's it. I'll end it there. So once again, Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually pretty quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that these markets are rocky, they're volatile, they're very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thanks for your time. Have a good day.